Universal Law, Natural Science and Philosophy by Walter Russell, S.C. D. and Lau Russell. Lesson number 37. The Walter Russell Foundation, Swannanoa, Waynesboro, Virginia. Copyrighted 1951 by Walter and Lau Russell. Reincarnation continued from Lesson 31. Unlawful beliefs. Legend tells us that we die and go up to heaven. There is an assumption, or vague understanding, that our bodies take on some other body form, a more etheric, or spiritual condition of matter that is quite different from the matter of our visible bodies. Some religious cults call these spiritual after-death bodies, astral bodies. It is even imagined that the matter of which our spiritual bodies are composed is so light that we can sit on clouds, and religious lore pictures our spiritual bodies sitting on clouds playing spiritual harps. Heaven is supposed to be the space above the earth to which our material bodies ascend and become spiritual bodies. In Oriental religious belief and legend, the spiritual body reincarnates and becomes physical again. In Occidental religious belief, the body dies and its soul goes to heaven to remain forever. It does not reincarnate. 629. Universal Law, Natural Science and Philosophy, page 630. There is a scientific basis for the Oriental theory of reincarnation, but not for the Occidental idea. Imaginative cultist thinkers have created many strange and fantastic forms which still live high up above the earth in ghostly bodies which some call astral, or spiritual, or protoplasmic bodies. Familiarity with bodies demands that these imagined forms resemble human bodies except for their lack of solidity. Hence these astral bodies have arms, legs, head and features like humans, only more ethereal. There are many who believe that the spiritual bodies can be summoned to earth by a medium to talk to loved ones. Such bodies are said to appear fully clothed, with hair nicely combed as last seen 40 years ago, who then engage in conversation regarding trifles of no import. It is strange that such believers do not think through to the root of things, of what use is a body, which is designed for an environment of earth, in an environment where its body has no possibility of use. God's creations are purposeful, and God fits his creations to environments where they can manifest purposefulness. How ludicrous and illogical it is to think of hair, fingernails, teeth, bones and flesh of even ethereal bodies growing for centuries in an environment where they would be of no purpose whatsoever. No bodies of any nature could be static. They would either have to grow or decay, for all bodies are material, whether ethereal or otherwise. How ludicrous also it is to think of clothing remaining unchanged for indefinite periods, which must be that way when people claim that their mother. Universal Law, Natural Science and Philosophy, page 631 appeared in the same black silk dress and white collar that she was buried in. In their eagerness to create man-like astral bodies, they do not think things through. If they did, they would realize the absurdities of such unnatural conjuring-s. There are many others who think of great humans as ascended masters. These spirit beings supposedly dwell above the earth and are presumed to guide the people of earth. You should dismiss all such thought from your thinking, for they are but conjurings of the senses, not even of the mind of man. They are not based upon knowledge. The senses alone have conjured them. It would be a tragic and cruel thing if such things were true. How much more beautiful to know that your loved ones may be back on earth, instead of floating around indefinitely in the sub-zero of space. Is it not more beautiful to think of your mother as being reborn into your own family, which is quite possible? So many people think of rejoining their loved ones after they pass on. How impossible this would be! Suppose your mother died when you were a child, and you died at 80. How would she know you? Also, if that idea were possible, she would seek her own parents, who also would have sought theirs for thousands of generations back. You see therefore that this is not only impossible but is a most illogical theory. Reincarnation. A simple analogy. What are the actual facts about reincarnation? Facts which we can see clearly, not strained to see through a fog of abstract theories? Where do we universal law, natural science and philosophy page 632 really go when we die? What really happens after death of the body? What is the interval like between death and rebirth? Is there a heaven? Do we have some other kind of body? The whole idea is quite simple when we understand the mechanism of the making of bodies and of taking them apart to remake. Perhaps a very simple analogy would help to clarify this idea. We show you a photograph of yourself, and ask, what would you do if we tore up this photograph of you? You would answer, I have the negative and can make another positive, so it would not matter. How could the negative give you another positive? We ask. I would project the sunlight through the patterned negative and the reverse of it would give me the positive pattern. You would reply, in principle reincarnation is as simple as that, and all of the above questions regarding what happens after death can be answered by the same simple analogy. Let us compare the familiar principle of photography with the unfamiliar principle of reincarnation and see if one will not help explain the other. Everyone knows that every positive photograph has a negative counterpart. Everyone knows, also, that the negative is the reverse of the positive. Also everyone knows that the pattern of the negative is reproduced, might we say reincarnated, exactly the same in pattern in the positive as in the negative, except that each is the reverse of the other. Not only is the pattern of the positive reversed in the negative but universal law, natural science and philosophy page 633 every element which composes that photographed body is in reverse. White light in the positive half of the body is black light in the negative half. The right arm in the positive is a left arm in the negative. Every creating body is divided into reverse opposites. Do you not see polarity in this effect? And do you not also know that polarity is the division of one into a seeming two reversed opposites of each other which simulate the one? And do you not now thoroughly understand that every body ever created is polarized into its positive and negative counterparts, each being the reversed opposite of the other? Now substitute the human body in place of the photograph of a human body. Instead of destroying the positive photograph of the human body, leaving only the negative counterpart, the human body itself is destroyed. It dies, we say. At any rate it has disappeared as a visible, positive body. We now ask, where has it gone? It has disappeared, but has it ceased to be? No, it has not ceased to be. Its negative counterpart still exists, just as the negative of a destroyed photograph still exists. All bodies, human and otherwise, are composed of spheres of white light surrounded by cube-wave fields of black light. The centering body of spheres is the positive half of the body. The surrounding space is the negative half of the body. Together they make one complete continuous repetitive whole, just as the positive photograph and its negative make one complete continuous repetitive whole. The distinguishing difference is only that the photograph and its negative universal law, natural science and philosophy page 634 are two-dimensional, while spherical bodies and cubes of space are three-dimensional. The photograph negative is flat and light penetrates that flat plane of zero curvature and reproduces a reversed body on another flat plane of zero curvature. In nature, the black negatives of space entirely surround the white positives. If you look at the stars, you will see the black negatives of space through which white light is being projected radially inward toward a center of gravity, to reproduce white star bodies at their centers. Reincarnation in the heavens. If you look at any one of the stars for billions of years, you will see it disappear, or die, just as you disappear or die. What has happened to it, you ask? If you wait long enough, it will reappear. The negative has absorbed the positive, but white light will again be projected through that negative and will print another sun. Scientists have long wondered how it is that matter seems to emerge from space and be swallowed up again by space. We must make that mystery crystal clear to you, else the mystery of regeneration, or regermination, which we familiarly term reincarnation, will not be clear to you, as it must be during these lessons. Bodies eternally repeat themselves to manifest life step by step. We shall explain to you that what you consider to be your dead body is merely the fading out of the positive image of you into its living negative counterpart in the cube wave field of your dual body. Every minute detail. Universal Law, Natural Science and Philosophy, page 635 of the pattern, which is your positive body, still exists and lives in reverse in the cube of space which surrounds the conscious soul of that body. When we say that the negative counterpart still lives as the positive half has lived, we mean just that. The negative still pulses within its own long-wave sense range just as the positive pulsed within its short-wave sense range. Moreover, it pulses under the conscious control of its conscious center of desire and its soul seed, which is as eternal as God is eternal. Nothing can ever happen to that, even though many years pass before its regermination again occurs. You must learn to think of the negative body as the thought body or thought record of the material body, and you must learn to think of your thought body in space as the reverse opposite of yourself. You must learn to think of loved ones who have past and all things else which have had material bodies as but having interchanged from their positive to their negative counterparts, or from their material body to their thought body. Likewise, you must think of the range of sensing of thought bodies as beyond your range of sensing, as your range of sensing is beyond the range of sensing of thought bodies, and you must learn to think of one as action and the other as rest from action. Just as your day manifests the white light of positive action and your night manifests the black light of negative rest from action, translating this back to cause. It is the eternal repetition of concentration followed by decentration which the thinking of mind is. Universal Law, Natural Science and Philosophy, page 636. Nowhere in this universe can you get away from that. Mind knows, and mind knowing is undivided. And mind thinks, and mind thinking is divided into concentration-decentration sequences. You decentrate to conceive thought bodies, or add to them. You then concentrate to multiply thought bodies into positive, material body forms. If the above paragraph seems strange to you, it is because it has not yet been realized that positive material bodies of white light are but multiplied thought bodies, and that negative thought bodies of black light are but divided material bodies. Two-way thinking. Learn to adjust your thinking to the way a pendulum swings, or as the piston of an engine alternates between compression and expansion. When you concentrate, try to realize that you are but compressing your thoughts, and when you decentrate, try to realize that you are expanding them for the purpose of adding to your conception. Familiarize your thinking with the law of nature that everything which unfolds from the seed in the womb of earth refolds back into its seed for reborning. This fact you must realize, for that is nature's bookkeeping system. That is the way nature records every thought and action of all creation. As the wood, and bark, and leaves of a tree unfold outwardly from the stillness of its seed toward the heavens, it simultaneously refolds inwardly towards its central seed. In the seed is the eternally living soul of the idea which the body but manifests. The seed is an ultramicroscopic focal universal law. Natural Science and Philosophy, page 637. Point of desire in the zero universe. The pattern of idea is not in the seed. The patterned body which that seed records surrounds it in space, a very large amount of space, miles of space for the seed of a man or tree, and millions of miles for a planet or sun. The seed is the soul. It is desire in the soul for creative expression. It is the fulcrum from which the father and mother principles of thought extends to create decentrated and concentrated thought bodies, which gravitate to compress thought bodies into centering spheres of white light, and radiate to expand them into surrounding cubes of black light. It is through the constant and equal interchange between gravitation and radiation that this two-way universe of matter and motion continues its eternal interchange forever. Gravity, in spiritual language, means the father principle of desire and nature for manifestation of idea in material form through concentration of motion. Conversely, radiation, in spiritual language, means the mother principle of desire and nature to record idea in expanded thought bodies through decentration of motion. Bear in mind, however, that all bodies are thought bodies expressed in reversed pairs, one half being concentrated, or compressed, into visible forms, the other half being decentrated, or expanded, into invisible forms. Bear in mind also that thought bodies interchange with each other, each becoming the other alternately, as the pendulum swings to interchange its visible and invisible counterparts alternately. Universal Law, Natural Science and Philosophy, page 638. Also bear in mind that both halves of thought bodies are moving extensions of the still light of mind, as both swings of the pendulum are moving extensions of the still fulcrum which centers them. The moment that any focal point of desire to create a positive body from a negative pattern in space germinates in the womb of earth, something takes place which we call growth. The microscopic invisible point of gravity begins to multiply its body. It grows bigger and bigger. The miracle of growth, instead of thinking of it as something which is growing, try to imagine it as a positive image which is being photographed into its positive form from the negative form which surrounds it. Now try to think of it as a time exposure. Just as it takes time to project light through a two-dimensional negative to print a positive, so, likewise, it takes time for light waves in space to gravitate toward the center of desire which the seed is. Consider your own body, for example. It took millions of years of desire of your soul to build your body, one little thought at a time, one little desire at a time. You cannot reproduce it instantaneously. It takes time. It takes about 40 years for your negative body to print a positive one, and another 40 years for the positive to fade out into its negative. Light waves built your body. Long light waves came out from the dark of your wave field in space and shortened into smaller waves as they built up the materials called for by the negative pattern of your body, which entirely surrounds its center of desire and its eternal soul seed. Universal Law, Natural Science and Philosophy, page 639. Calcium must be formed for bones, hydrocarbons for flesh. and many other elements of alkaline or acid base, or negative and positive polarity for other parts of our complex bodies. In other words, it takes time to project the timeless zero of idea into a three-dimensional time-space universe of motion to build a negative and positive pair of bodies which eternally interchange to manifest idea of thinking mind. Time is represented by waves of motion which pump expanded black light out of the cubes of space and multiply it into white light of solid spheres. That is all that is happening to you and to the universe. You are forever interchanging your expanded thought body with your contracted material body forever and forever. Life and death born each other, that is all that creation is. That is all that life-death is. That is all that your in-breathing out-breathing is. That is all that growth-decay is. Both are one continuity. They are one pendulum which swings two ways from a still center, one wave lever which oscillates two ways from the fulcrum of the soul. Try to expand the range of your thinking to include what you know as well as what you see. You see an apple growing bigger and bigger on the branch, instead of just seeing the body of an apple growing from a bud to a matured red apple. Add your knowing to your sensing. Know it as a body being formed by the white light coming from far out in space through the negative pattern of that apple which unfolds its universal law. Natural Science and Philosophy, page 640. Positive. Think of the apple as a positive photograph which is slowly being printed as a reversed image of its negative record which reaches far out into space, and let your knowing reach out into that invisible record. As you learn to thus expand your thinking, include in your thinking your knowledge of the mechanics of that forming body, whether of an apple, violet, animal or man. As you see things growing bigger and bigger, know that the matter which is becoming a positive body is being pumped out of the ground by the white light of space. Think of the light waves which pump negative light into positive light forms as levers which oscillate from the fulcrum of desire which centers every forming body as its soul seed. Know also that the pattern of the body is determined by the black negative which surrounds the forming body in space, just as the positive photograph must be the reversed image of its negative pattern. Do not be limited in your thinking by what your senses see, for what your senses see is not the reality which your mind knows. Realize that your senses are limited to a very small range. They do not sense the whole of anything. For that reason you can have but very little knowledge if you base that knowledge upon what your senses tell you. That is why you believe that you die. Your senses do not tell you of the continuity which goes on beyond your sense of perception. Your knowledge must, therefore, forever be the fulcrum from which your senses extend. You must be able to know the whole oak even though you see but its seed. No microscope could show you one leaf of the oak and its seed, but your inner vision and illumined knowing can visualize the whole invisible oak extending from its visible seed. Universal Law, Natural Science and Philosophy, page 641. That is what we mean when we say that you must rise above your sensing. Be the whole universe in your knowing. The Divine Iliad message tells us of the 3 steps of unfolding man in these 6 short words. See me. Know me. Be me. The more we know God, the more we realize that the soul which centers us is God, and the more we realize that our power is as unlimited as the universe is unlimited. Universal Law, Natural Science and Philosophy by Walter Russell, S.C. D. and Lau Russell. Lesson number 38. The Walter Russell Foundation, Swannanoa, Waynesboro, Virginia. Copyrighted 1951 by Walter and Lau Russell. Spiritual relations and the relation of man and woman to nature and tce. Kothur. We have talked of many things, many fundamental elements which constitute God's creating universe. The only purpose for writing even one line of these lessons is to give men and women a greater knowledge of their own individual source of power, their mutual source of power, through mental and physical interchange, or through the unity of balanced mating. 3. The way they can individually or mutually multiply their power to become the Supreme Being whom we all manifest on earth. 4. The manner in which they can intensify desire in themselves in order to multiply the fruits of desire. 5. A workable understanding as to how they can apply this knowledge to build more healthful strong bodies under mind control, instead of sense control, and thus build the human race into more perfect instruments for manifesting its Creator. 643 Universal Law, Natural Science and Philosophy. Page 644. We have too long lived in the dark of guessing about the fundamentals of existence. Our lives have been too experimental because they lacked exact knowledge upon which to base the decisions which constitute life. We have lived in an abstract world of experimental guessing too long. Our human relations have been abstract and experimental, and because of ignorance of the law which governs them we have made a very bad mess of our civilization. But human relations are not the only consideration of life. We are not here on earth to just trade with each other, or have pleasant social and cultural relations with each other. It is not enough that we have peace and goodwill on earth with each other. The ultimate of man, we have a far greater purpose than that our sensed electric bodies should sense each other, even if we sensed each other in such harmony and unity that war would be unthinkable and impossible. We are not just humans, human men and women who deal with each other as humans, human men and women who reproduce male and female children to grow up and be the same kind of humans. We are more than just human beings, placed on earth to manifest our humanity. We are spiritual beings placed on earth to manifest the one Supreme Being and to know ourselves as that one. Our spiritual relations should, therefore, transcend our human relations. Universal Law, Natural Science and Philosophy. Page 645. The illusion of the senses in our awareness. We are first humans, because we can see our bodies and sense their existence in their electric environment. In other words, our electric senses tell us of our physical existence. That is all we are aware of for many eons, and the evidence of our senses is all we have to tell us of it. Such evidence is unreliable, for the senses are limited to sensing. They have no knowledge in them, and, therefore, all conclusions which are based upon the senses are of no value except for experiment by the senses. This leads to a reasoning process which is not mental, for it has no inspiration in it. We have built our entire civilization through this reasoning process with the exception of the little culture which our few cosmic beings have given to it. This important fact we want you to know, for too many of the creations of men are synthesized from the senses by the experimental process of reasoning. They have no genius in them. They have not even mentality in them. For mentality is spiritual and our senses are as totally unaware of their spiritual control as an electric machine made by man is aware of its control by the intelligence of man. Our senses, therefore, cannot sense the spirit of man because the spiritual source of man is invisible. It cannot be seen. It can only be known. You cannot acquire knowledge through the senses. Knowledge can be acquired only through desire of the soul. There is no other way. To acquire knowledge you must ask God for it. You must transcend humanity to ask God for it. You must forget your body and transcend your senses to ask God for knowledge. You must be holy mind to commune with mind. Universal Law, Natural Science and Philosophy, page 646. Knowledge is cause. Cause lies at the source of all effect. The senses sense only effect. Knowledge can only be known, for the source can be only known. It cannot be seen. Effect cannot be known. You can see, therefore, that cosmic beings transcend human beings in the measure that their spiritual relations transcend their human relations. The genius is cosmic degrees. He lives in another world. He can transcend his humanity at will. Meditation is the bridge which the human must cross to transform the information which his senses have recorded upon his brain into knowledge which centers him in the light of his universal self. These very words which we are writing have a meaning behind them which your senses cannot see. You can read them with your senses and gain no knowledge whatsoever from them. They may be even acceptable to your logic and reasoning, but still have no knowledge in them. When you are simultaneously informed by your senses, and inspired by your soul by reading them, you are then manifesting God anew through your senses, because your spiritual relations are as strong, or stronger than your objective material senses. Perhaps it might be clearer to you to exemplify this idea to one who listens to a musical masterpiece. The purely physical materialist will hear nothing but sounds. Their rhythms may entertain his senses, but that which is spiritual in music does not touch him. One whose soul responds a little to that which is spiritual in music is re-inspired in the measure that his soul is touched by the soul of the composer. Universal Law, Natural Science and Philosophy, page 647. If such a one carries the memory of that music into his meditation, he awakens his own genius more and more deeply by such meditation. That is what we mean by cultivating your spiritual relations to such a high potential that you can live more and more in that other cosmic world of ecstasy which transcends the limitations of the material world of sensing. Misconception of intelligence. Unless we make this idea as clear as crystal to you, we are not accomplishing the purpose of giving you knowledge by awakening your mind. For this reason we must dwell on this idea until it is more fully understood. There are a large number of people whom we familiarly call the intelligentsia. The dictionary defines these as the educated classes. These include the teacher of history in the university who can tell you every important event in world history, even to the dates of their happenings. It includes the astronomer-mathematician who can calculate an eclipse to the split second, the inventor who can make a machine for doing marvelous things, the physicist, chemist, or metallurgist who can combine countless elements to create countless effects, or the electrical engineer who can cause your voice to be repeated thousands of miles away, or to tell a ship in the dark that another is ahead in its path. It is commonly assumed that these people have great knowledge. That does not necessarily follow. As a matter of fact, there is very little knowledge in the world, even among the greatest of scientists or philosophers. Great intelligence in combining observed effects, or great intelligence in reasoning from conclusions arrived at by the evidence of one's senses, does not constitute knowledge. Universal Law, Natural Science and Philosophy, page 648. Science terms such conclusions empirical knowledge. Philosophers have another term, empiricism, which is an assumption that all knowledge is gained by experience. If conclusions arrived at by the evidence of one's senses can give knowledge to such an observer, science would have knowledge of the cause and source of its observed effects. Science has great skills, great reasoning and great intelligence in combining effects. It knows how to do many things, but it admittedly does not know the why of anything. Ask one of the greatest scientists in the world what electricity is, or light, gravitation, energy, radiation, heat, friction, magnetism, oxygen, or polarity. He will tell you that he does not know. Ask him why a falling stone accelerates, or why orbits of planets are elliptical. He will also tell you that he does not know. Ask him why you can insulate electricity but cannot insulate magnetism. Again he will tell you that he does not know. He has sensed all of these effects, but comprehension of them has not gone beyond the senses to the mind. He has many theories and many laws which are also conclusions arrived at by the evidence of his senses, but the most fundamental of them have no relation to nature's workings whatsoever. The Coulomb electric law, the first and second laws of thermodynamics, the theories of attraction and repulsion of matter, of the birth of planets, of the construction of the atom, and practically every theory of the cause of things show no evidence of knowledge in them. They show merely that the senses have observed what are presumed to be facts of motion, not realizing that all motion is illusion, all of it not universal law. Natural Science and Philosophy, page 649. Just such familiar illusions of perspective as the seeming fact that railroad tracks meet degrees lithe horizon, or that humans seem to grow smaller as they walk away from one. To reason from such observations does not give one knowledge, it merely increases one's ability to guess logically. Further evidence of the impossibility of gaining knowledge through the senses without a spiritual transformation of sense observation into mind knowing through meditation, lies in the searchings of science for such hidden secrets as the shape of the universe, which has no shape, or the relation of time to the universe, the time of its beginning and probable ending, when time in itself is an illusion, its forward flow being cancelled by its backward flow, or the search for the life principle in some germ. One might as well cast nets in the sea for oxygen as to continue that search, for the life principle is not in matter nor motion. To assume that the teacher of physics in college has great knowledge when the theories he teaches are pure invention, and are not founded upon nature, is not logical. Cosmic thinkers, we tell you these things to point out the difference between the material thinker and the cosmic one. The genius knows, he thinks from knowing mind instead of senses, which sense effects without knowing their source. He whose thinking is based upon the evidence of his senses alone may have great intelligence, be very successful in material things, make a lot of money and stand high among men. But the very same man who awakens his sleeping soul sufficiently to transform his material sensing into spiritual knowing, universal law, natural Science and Philosophy, page 650, finds himself living in another world of glory indescribable. His is the glory of knowing himself as universal man instead of being a separate unit among many men. He who has thus transformed his sensing to knowing has multiplied his power immeasurably and his capacity for living as transcendent being in a transcendent world. To become a transcendent being, we explain this idea in such detail because it is generally assumed that sensing, and reasoning from sensed observation, is thinking from the mind. Sense thinking is merely making use of the countless memory records which have been stored upon the brain and assembling them into varied forms. The brain is not the mind. It is but a storehouse for memories of experiences of the senses. The brain does not know. It but repeats recordings of the senses. The brain remembers, repeats, assembles and rearranges memories, compares them, adds one to another, and reasons new combinations of things remembered by the senses which will do this or that. By an analytical comparative, synthesizing process. The senses will put things together which the senses have observed and remember. If such a brain composes music, the result will be a synthesis or complex plagiarism of many things heard and repeated. Such music cannot endure, even though many of its motives may be repeated from the enduring works of such transcendent beings as Beethoven, Mozart or Wagner. The reason for this is that transcendent beings put their soul into their universal law. Natural Science and Philosophy, page 651. Creations, and that is why the work of cosmic thinkers endures. We have explained to you that the soul is the desire force for creative expression in mind. Works of man which emanate from mind endure. He who has arisen above his sensing, and thinks from the still light of his mind has a vast power which those who think from the senses can never have. The world needs transcendent thinkers in all works of men, whether in the business, professional or cultural worlds. Sensed thinkers are materialists. Mind thinkers are idealists. Idealists are world leaders, not materialists. Likewise, spiritual thinkers transcend sense thinkers. We will expand this idea in Lesson 39. Our human relations sorely need the guidance of leaders whose spiritual relations are the source of their leadership. Mankind needs the spiritual thinker in all elements of life, not merely in the arts and other cultural elements. A suggestion to the awakening genius: one whose thinking stems from his senses alone might be likened to the pendulum which swings both ways as an extension from the still fulcrum from which it swings without having an awareness of that still power of its source. Those transcendent beings who give the world its enduring truths think from the light of mind which centers them, and they are fully aware of that source. Our first 4 lessons told you how to reach that stage of soul awareness through meditation, which means to decentrate instead of concentrate. Such universal law, Natural Science and Philosophy, page 652. A transition consumes much time, but as you become more and more accustomed to making that transition, you will find that you can remain in that exalted and ecstatic condition while you work at your creations of any nature. You will find that your soul awareness will make you forget the senses of your body as you think with full awareness of the source of your thinking. That is what we mean by working knowingly with God. That is the trend of the unfolding race of man. That is what we mean by your spiritual relations with the spiritual mind of the universe. We shall continue this thought into the next lesson to explain in greater detail, by word and diagram, how each individual multiplies his self as either man or woman, and how man and woman multiply their power as a unified pair. Few people realize the multiplied power of a completely unified and balanced man and woman, nor is the scientific aspect of such a union even faintly understood. It is vitally important that it should be understood, for balanced mating is the most important element in everyone's life. Also, we will scientifically explain the principle of thought communication with those who have passed on. Universal Law, Natural Science and Philosophy by Walter Russell, S.C.D. and Lau Russell. Lesson number 39. The Walter Russell Foundation, Swannanoa, Waynesboro, Virginia. Copyrighted 1951 by Walter and Lau Russell. Reincarnation continued. Through cosmic knowing we multiply ourselves into transcendent beings. The human race is slowly unfolding from a primitive, physical existence to a divine spiritual one. The stages of our unfolding begin with a limited range of body sensing, and end with an unlimited range of mind knowing. Thousands of years are consumed in the process of making even a little progress from physical sensing to mind knowing. The process is one of slow multiplication for the sensed individual who has not yet heard the inner voice of universal mind urging him to communion with the light of knowing mind, but it multiplies very quickly for one whose soul is awakened to a realization of the omnipotence and omniscience of all mankind. If you have heard your awakened soul whispering inspired knowledge intuitively to you, it but marks a point in your unfolding which has taken you millions of years to reach. You can continue to unfold slowly for another 1,000 years with but little progress, or you can gain 1,000 years of progress in a few. 653 Universal Law, Natural Science and Philosophy, page 654. Months or weeks or even in a timeless flash, if you will so live your life that you do not yourself smother that voice of inner awakening as the great mass of humans are perpetually doing, to prefer to listen to the noises which vibrate their senses rather than to the silence of their all-knowing souls which are still and without vibration. These lessons are for the purpose of giving you the knowledge of how to transcend yourself by multiplying yourself. By gaining the comprehension which will enable you to increase the range of your now very limited sense perception to a very great range. By a great increase in what is known as extrasensory perception. The great mass of the human race has, as yet, but learn to think in the positive direction of concentration. Only a few can balance their concentrative thinking with decentrative thinking, and a more rare few can control their thinking from the still center from which the pendulum of their thinking swings two ways between the positive and negative halves of their bodies. Every gain in knowledge in this direction increases the range of sense perception. By the multiplying power of balanced mating, which means the unifying principle that voids the unbalance of divided sex condition. Knowledge of the electric nature of the two opposites which male and female are, will avoid the great ills which arise from pure ignorance of this relation. By gaining the power to acquire knowledge from the invisible cause of all things without needing to be informed by the senses, to attain this end is to attain all there is to attain. He who desires to attain it may do so by fulfilling the requirements for fulfilling that desire. Universal Law, Natural Science and Philosophy, page 655. All knowledge exists. Knowledge belongs to the mind universe. He who desires all knowledge may attain it only by transcending the sensed material universe. The consciousness of man must transcend the sensed electric body of man. When consciousness awakens in man, it controls the body in the measure of its awakening. Until that time man thinks of his body as his self. When man sits within his body and knowingly controls it, as he sits within his car and controls it, he then knows his body as but an instrument for his self-expression. When he is thus aware of the light which his consciousness is, he has transcended his senses. The greater his knowledge, the more he multiplies himself. Likewise, the more transcendent he becomes mentally, the greater he increases his range of physical perception beyond the now very limited range. In other words, the more he can think negatively out from his body into the immensity of recorded thoughts in the wave fields of space, the more he will gain telepathic powers of thought transference between the living present and the still living past beings of Earth. When you have attained that center of light which is the fulcrum of your thinking, you have then also become the fulcrum of timeless world thinking, for all thoughts extend from that which you have become. This is your goal. It is the ultimate goal of all mankind. The rest of these lessons, from now on, will concentrate upon illumining your path to this goal. To do this we must give you thorough knowledge of the universal law, Natural Science and Philosophy, page 656. Mechanical processes by means of which this divided electric universe builds positive and negative thought bodies for the sole purpose of manifesting idea of mind in thought forms. That is all this universe of motion and matter is. It is but a cosmic cinema of thought forms, thought images of mind imaginings. From now on we will concentrate upon clarifying this statement to you in words which are much exemplified by diagrams. Thought mechanics. We again refer to the undivided mind universe of idea as symbolized in Figure 8, on page 149, and the divided thought universe, as exemplified in Figure 9 on same page. The idea of creation is one, but the expression of idea is seemingly many. The many thought forms are extended from the one mind. They are but seemingly separate and separable for only one reason. That reason is because they are in motion, opposed motion in two opposite directions, which cause two opposite effects. If all motion suddenly ceased, the universe would be without form and void. It would then be one without the illusion of separateness. Our purpose now is to explain the mechanics of the illusion which makes it possible for the one to seem to be many. The secret of it lies in the desire of mind to think its one idea of creation into the many thought forms of that one idea. To think means universal law. Natural Science and Philosophy, page 657. To extend motion from stillness, and the motion thus extended must become still. It must then again become motion in order to return to the point of stillness from which it sprang. In more simple words, thought springs from rest at zero, seeks a point of rest, and returns to rest at zero. Every action in nature is the result of desire to express action. Likewise, every action of every nature expresses its desire by extending from zero radially outward, to seek zero, and it then returns radially inward to again seek rest at a point of zero motion. No action in nature, no matter how great or small, varies this one principle of mechanics of motion. This one mechanical principle of desire for expression, followed by its equal reaction, is the pulse beat or outward-inward breath of this living universe. We are overwhelmed by the size and complexity of this universe. We will try to simplify this complexity by some simple analogies. A simple analogy number 1. If you look out into the night sky, you will see myriads of bright stars. They all seem to be motionless, even though they are moving thousands of miles each minute. They have been there millions of years and will still be there more millions of years. See Fig. 72. Now suppose you looked out one night and saw those stars coming and going, appearing suddenly as a bright light and then immediately disappearing into the dark. Instead of a duration of billions of years, they were visible for only a small fraction of a second as light emerging from the dark. Universal law. Natural Science and Philosophy, page 658. Then suppose you suddenly realized that you were not looking at stars at all, but were looking at fireflies flashing in the meadow. If, in your imagination, you could look at the stars that way, as but transient explosions, you would have a better idea of the cosmos as a whole. See Fig. 73. The light from the firefly is an expression of desire extended all around the point of desire. So, likewise, is a sun, or planet or tree or insect or atom of silicon. Every creative action is an outward-inward explosion. No. 2. Now let us look at all nature as though the desire to express idea is manifested by an outer explosion followed by an inner explosion. Do not consider an explosion from the time basis, consider an explosion of gunpowder, of a sun, a man, a violet or an oak tree as the same in principle but differing only in time. A dynamite explosion may take but a few seconds for both the outward action and the inward reaction. A sun billions of years, an oak tree 100 years, or a violet but a few days, but each is the same effect. See Figure 74. Postulate. Now apply the above to purpose. God's purpose, the outward extension from a point of desire anywhere in God's cosmos, is the action of giving. Giving outward from a point means to radiate, for the desire to give extends radially in all directions. Axiom. That outward thrust of electric force which science calls radiation is the universal law. Natural Science and Philosophy, page 659. Mother principle of creation. The cosmic meaning of radiation is to give. Its creative principle is to unfold thought forms from the seed to record as negative thought bodies in space. Postulate. The outward explosion of radiation leaves a vacuum behind it which must be refilled, and an equator of compression ahead of it which must be relieved. The inward reaction to the outward action pulls inward explosively toward the same point of desire which caused the outward action. The reaction to giving is re-giving. This is inviolate law. Re-giving inward toward a point means to gravitate, for the re-giving extends radially toward a center of gravity. See Figure 16, page 165. Axiom. The inward pull of electric force which science calls gravitation is the father principle of creation. The cosmic meaning of gravitation is to be re-given equally for that which is given. Its creative principle is to refold thought forms toward the seed to record as positive thought bodies in matter. Another simple analogy. No. 3. We have stated that every unit of creation is an extension of every other unit. Also we have stated that each unit is indissolubly bound to every other unit and that each is constantly interchanging with every other unit. Hence the oneness, and the interdependence of every unit of creation upon every other unit. A simple diagram will clarify this idea. See Fig. 75, Universal Law, Natural Science and Philosophy, page 660. Every action in this universe of divided light, is an outer explosion of radiating black light, and for very reaction, is an inner explosion of gravitating white light. Da Margwan. Universal Law, Natural Science and Philosophy, page 661. God is light and God is love. Love is divided into pairs of opposites. Re-giving radiation is the action of giving. Its reaction is gravitation. Universal Law, Natural Science and Philosophy, page 662. This drawing represents two suns in space. We have made them similar in mass so their wave fields will be equal. These suns have been compressed into their abundance by the multiplication of light given to them. They must radiate a part of that abundance. They cannot help it. They cannot withhold their abundance as humans do. If they could withhold it they would wither as humans do who withhold of their givings. Each of these two suns give to each other by radiating their gift outward into space. Between each unit of creation and every other unit there is a plane of equal pressures where whatever is radiated by each unit reverses its direction at that equator and then gravitates toward every other unit in creation. Figure 75, which illustrates balanced interchange between two suns, and Figure 76, which illustrates balanced interchange between a man and woman, and Figure 77, which illustrates balanced interchange between the opposite poles of a bar magnet, represent two polarized units in space. Each of these units radiates its light outwardly into space. Each ray gives that which space gave to it in abundance. Each sun is presumably giving to the other. Each human is presumably giving to another, and one pole of a magnet is likewise presumed to be giving to the other. That is a fact, but beyond that interchange between just two units is the greater fact that each is giving to every other unit in space. This greater fact is the one which escapes the observation of man. This fact needs the greater attention of mankind because our peace and happiness universal law, Natural Science and Philosophy, page 663, is measured by our knowledge of this great universal fact that we cannot give to anyone individually without giving to the whole human race, nor, conversely, can we hurt one human without hurting the whole human race. The sun cannot restrict its radiation to one sun, nor can man restrict his radiation to one man. All units of creation radiate out into all space. All units are extensions of each other. Each unit of creation interchanges its very breathing with every other unit. Each unit increases the abundance of every other unit by reversing the expansion of its radiation to the contraction of gravitation. Carefully study the arrows in figures 75, 76 and 77. Note that radiation reverses its direction at every equator, which divides every unit of creation from every other unit. Note carefully that every radiating line is reversed to a gravitating one at the equator. Make it a part of your consciousness and your knowing, that every creating unit in the entire universe is an extension of every other unit. That being factually so, every action by anybody anywhere affects everybody by its reaction everywhere. Make it a part of your consciousness that you cannot extend a gift to any individual anywhere without extending it everywhere. If you give your son $1,000, it immediately begins to be extended throughout the whole human race. Even though he locks it in a steel safe, it will eventually become unfrozen and radiate its light to all humanity. Make it a part of your consciousness, also, that all we are dealing with universal law, Natural Science and Philosophy, page 664, illustrating the father-mother principle of building bodies by dividing light into polarized units and reproducing bodies by uniting two wave fields of opposed units into one. See text. Universal Law, Natural Science and Philosophy, page 665, illustrating the father-mother octave wave principle of building perfect spherical bodies of incandescent white light, by winding black light centripetally from zero, then unwinding it to zero. Universal Law, Natural Science and Philosophy, page 666. In this universe is the light of love, which cannot be bound, nor limited. Just as you cannot prevent the sound of your voice reaching around the earth 7 times per second, so, also, you cannot prevent any thought or action of yours from impacting every human on the planet. Fix also into your consciousness that your eternal soul is but a centering point in the universal consciousness, and the limits of desire extending from your soul are those of the universe itself. Fix also into your knowing that you are both father and mother, for you radiate light and light gravitates to you. You are a focal center of a spiral vortex, a center of gravity toward whom the universe must give a vitreous abundance to maintain your abundance. When you have learned the greatest of lessons, which is how to give, you will increase your abundance in the measure of your ability to give with love without any other motive than giving love. When you have learned that fact, you will have learned that you are equally anode and cathode, equally radiative and gravitative, a balanced mind controlling a balanced body. And as you learn this fact by practicing it, you will feel your power growing, your mental stature multiplying, and your state of mind reflecting the ecstasy of your knowing God anew as one. New knowledge concerning the building of bodies. It is time that many misconceptions concerning the structure of matters which have been arrived at from observations of the senses, must be corrected. Universal Law, Natural Science and Philosophy, page 66. See, one of these is the assumption that the Earth is a huge magnet. This theory is commonly taught as a fact of matter and motion. It must be corrected because it is so fundamentally untrue that it would obstruct further knowledge of the structure of matter, just as a huge boulder would obstruct the passage of a railroad train. This theory was arrived at because the Earth has north and south magnetic poles, and so has a magnet. Look at figure 77 and you will see a polarized bar of steel which we call a bar magnet. If you try to pick up a nail with the magnet, you will find that you can do so at the two poles, which are gravitative radiative centers. You will find that the equator of the magnet is absolutely dead, so far as any indication of a gravitative inward pull, or a radiative outward thrust are concerned. On the contrary, everything which is affected by the Earth's gravity is pulled inward toward the center of the Earth's equator, not toward its poles, and everything also which is thrust away from the Earth is thrust radially away from its center of radiation, which is also the Earth's center of gravity. The Earth is not, therefore, a huge magnet. It is a body being formed into a sphere from zero form, and back again to zero, between the north pole of one electric wave, which a magnet is, and the south pole of another electric wave. You will see this in the diagram on page 522, figure 70. You will see there 6 waves which are nature's magnets, and between the positive and negative ends of each a perfect sphere is born. In figure 80 you will see the positive and negative ends of 2 bar magnets. Universal Law, Natural Science and Philosophy, page 668. In TRF octave light wave lies the secret of creation and all of its processes. At the left are the polarized mother-father units, and in the center are father-mother halves united in marriage to produce a perfectly balanced spherical body. Universal Law, Natural Science and Philosophy, page 669. Cross-section of octave wave illustrating the gyroscopic spiral principle of multiplication of power by axial 14 speed centripetally to build a sphere, then dividing power by decelerating speed centrifugally, and motion is again 0. At wave axis. Universal Law, Natural Science and Philosophy, page 670. Interchanging their balance in a desire for unity of 2 wave fields into one and 2 gravitative radiative centers into one. That is what marriage means, the union of 2 wave fields and 2 centers of gravity into one. If you place some iron filings between 2 bar magnets, you will find that they quickly form a sphere. If you approach that sphere with a needle, you will find that the needle points toward the center of the sphere, whereas it would point toward either pole of the magnet if the iron filings were removed. By studying figure 71 on page 523, and figure 80 together, you will more readily understand why the Earth is not one magnet but is the uniting of 2 halves of 2 magnets. In figure 78, the negative pole of a magnet is shown in proximity to the negative pole of another one, figure 79, but you see no tendency there of a desire of the light of either one to unite their equators and gravitative radiative centers into one. On the contrary, you will note the tendency of their light to repel union with each other. Nature does not reproduce bodies by uniting mothers with mothers or fathers with fathers. By an intensive study of all of these diagrams, you will better comprehend the law of balanced mating and the import of it. Balanced mating not only reproduces perfect physical bodies but multiplies mental power to create thought bodies, by uniting 2 separate wave fields into one. By so doing, 2 opposed unbalanced conditions become one balanced condition, both physically and mentally, The very intent of creation is based upon balanced mating. Without it, continuity would cease, which means that creation would cease. We urge upon universal law, natural sif.nce and philosophy page 671 you to give deep study to this fundamental principle of creation in order that you can intelligently multiply your power through balanced mating. It is better to not mate than to mate with unbalanced opposites, for each unit of creation is both father and mother. Each is like a polarized magnet, as shown in figure 71, each is complete in itself. Each has a positive and negative body and the power to concentrate and decentrate mentally. Mental interchange between positive and negative thought bodies by balancing the two is the only method of preventing a distracting unbalanced physical condition because of living too much in one's positive body and too little in its negative counterpart. An exalted mental state can entirely sublimate a physical unbalanced state if sufficiently assisted by joyous physical action. To anyone whose life and environment makes balanced mating impossible, we say to you, live joyously, exaltedly, ecstatically in the zero universe of mind-knowing. You can transcend your positively sensed body by decentration within the sense range of your negative body. Man is a spiritual being. He need not necessarily live within his positive sense range. Deep meditation to find perfect attunement with nature will make it possible for anyone to rely upon his own polarity and his own wave field for a unified existence, and be freed from reliance upon the necessity of finding unity by extension of polarity. All matter is light and is manifested by spiral light waves. There has been much controversy in science as to the nature of light. For a long time light has been presumed to be corpuscular, which means that it is composed of particles of matter. In recent years light has been said to universal law, natural science and philosophy page 672 be made up of waves. Both are right. All motion in the universe is wave motion. Matter is a corpuscular record of the electric potential at any one point in any wave. Particles of matter form wherever desire of mind to express form takes place, and that is everywhere. There is no point in the universe which is not continually extending and retracting in inward-outward explosions to multiply the black light of space into the white light of incandescent matter and to divide the white light to return it to the zero from which it came. Every particle of matter is a wave, and every wave is completely filled with particles of matter which measure the electric potential at every point in every wave field. Figure 82 illustrates how the electric current multiplies the zero of the universal equilibrium by winding low electric potential spirally into high potential, and then unwinding it to zero for repetition in the next wave cycle. The central sun in this electric cycle occupies a position in the electric current which is known to electricians as a loop of force. Wherever an electric current passes through a wire, these whirling loops of force occur to form microscopic atomic systems which are identical with a solar system, a nebula or a galaxy like the Milky Way. This little sun in figure 82 is a true sphere, and the orbits of all of its microscopic atoms revolve upon the plane of its equator. The same little sun is shown in fig. 83 at the amplitude of a wave. By studying this diagram, in connection with figures 84, 85 and 86, you may see the whole process of winding light gyroscopically and spirally into spheres in 4 efforts, then unwinding these spheres by 4 opposite efforts. Universal law, natural science and philosophy page 673. Spheres occur only at wave amplitudes, and the fact of its 4 positive and 4 negative efforts is the basis of the octave wave from which our spectrum, Our octaves of the elements and our octaves of musical tones are derived. This 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 4, 3, 2, 1, 0 octave sequence constitutes the heartbeat of the universe. It is the basis of our musical rhythms, our chemistry, our mathematics, our symmetry of design of all animal, mineral and vegetable forms, and of our color spectrum of light. Within the octave light waves of matter and motion lie all the secrets of creation. To know the wave is to know God's secrets and His processes. The next lesson will expand this idea more fully, but we can go no further now until we clarify the wave field principle itself. To do this we must make clear to you the principle of the cube wave fields of space, as we have made clear the centering physical bodies which have emerged from those wave fields of space. This mystery will be unfolded in lessons 41, 42, and 43, together with the secret of how positive and negative light turn inside out and outside in to radiate and gravitate light from zero to incandescence and back to zero. In the meantime, study these 6 pages of drawings carefully, for in them is the basis of all the arts and sciences of man. Universal Law, Natural Science and Philosophy by Walter Russell, SC and Lau Russell. Lesson number 40. The Walter Russell Foundation, Swannanoa, Waynesboro, Virginia. Copyrighted 1951 by Walter and Lau Russell. Answers to students' questions. It is indeed gratifying to receive more and more letters such as the following. I have written down 4 questions to ask you, but have obeyed your instructions to withhold them to see if I could not myself answer them. What you say about all questions are answerable within ourselves seems to come true the moment I turn within myself for the answer, instead of outside. Again, we insist that each individual person is an extension of the source of all knowledge. Why seek knowledge through another when it is within oneself? Someone else who has knowledge can open the door to it for you to enter, but you must enter that door yourself. Another can but re-inspire you to gain knowledge for yourself, as another can awaken in you the power to heal yourself, but no other person can heal you himself, nor give you knowledge. God-awareness in you alone does that. Some questions do, however, keep coming, many of them being so similar that we can almost resolve them into types. We answer a few of these here. Question: does the wholeness of God grow in potential through this 675? Universal Law, Natural Science and Philosophy, page 676. Divided and multiplied principle of creation. Is that the purpose of this simulated universe? The question as to this simulated universe has desired an answer for some time. Answer: God does not grow in potential. The potential of power which God has in His being is the measure of desire in Him to create His universe. That omnipotence is unchanging, it does not grow more or become less. That unchanging condition is the zero of equilibrium and is the still fulcrum from which multiplied and divided power extends as a lever extends from its fulcrum. God's power is manifested in His thinking. Thinking is electric. His electric thinking concentrates and decentrates. Potential multiplies in the direction of concentrative thinking. That direction is radially inward, which is the direction of gravitation. The maximum potential of concentrative thinking is recorded in spheres of matter as centers of gravity. All effects of motion multiply in this direction. Heat multiplies weight multiplies. Speed accelerates and all matter solidifies as multiplied pressures pack light waves into closer quarters. Conversely, potential divided in the outward radial direction. Solids divide into vapors, they cool as they divide and rise as they cool. The greater the division, the colder its temperature. the slower its speed of rising, and the less its weight and density. Do not be confused in this respect by the textbook teachings which say that hot air rises and cold air descends, for such is not true to natural law. Heating air descends to seek its like potential of heat, and cooling air rises to universal law. Natural Science and Philosophy, page 677, to seek its like potential of cold. In relation to your question regarding this simulated universe, we mean that all motion is only God's imaginings. The universe is a cosmic cinema, a multi-projection of the dual light of God's thinking onto the blank screen of space. Every happening unhappens as it happens, everything in nature is forever walking into a mirror of itself, so that one motion in one direction voids the other opposite one. As a pendulum swings one way, an invisible one swings the other way with equal and opposite force to void the other swing of it. Our senses are limited to seeing only one half of the effect. We see events in forward time only, hence we have sequences of events following each other like day and night. From this illusion of motion, due to limited sensing, time is conceived. If our senses extended clear around the 360-degree circle, we would sense a backward flow to time which voids its forward flow. You will more readily understand this if you realize that the universe is a two-way radial extension from the zero of the universal equilibrium. You cannot multiply zero, but you can seem to, nor can you divide zero, even though it seems that you can. N of 1,1 Alabama is as try it, 0 simultaneously multiplied and divided by xyling equals 0. Nature never multiplies potential without simultaneously dividing it equally. A solid is seemingly produced which the senses record, but nature simultaneously creates an empty vacuous black hole of space around that solid which we call empty space. It is empty because it has given fullness to its mate. Each are equal. Our senses are part of that division, but our universal law. Natural Science and Philosophy, page 678. Senses are not the whole of it. If they were the whole range of it, we would comprehend that we were but daydreaming, imagining, thinking image forms from imagined ideal, which is what God does to create this cosmic illusion. Creation is a wonderful and glorious vision, but it has no more reality than the cinema you see in the theater. That cinema consists of motion only, light and motion. Stop the motion and the motion picture would instantly cease. Degrees likewise, God's cosmic cinema would instantly cease if God stopped thinking. You ask the purpose of it all. From God's point of view, his purpose is to manifest that which he is in imagined form. God is light, God is love, God is truth and the law, all meaning the same thing with differing connotations. God desires to manifest love. He does so by dividing the giving of love in two opposite directions. The opposite expressions of love are giving and re-giving. But it is this fact of division of giving into two opposite directions that the illusion occurs. To sensed creatures, nature is an illusion of separateness of many things which appear, disappear and reappear, or live, die and are born again. If, however, our sense perception could record the negative bodies of motion in space as well as it could sense the positive ones of earth, we would sense the continuity of it all and thus sense the voidances which would cause motion to cease entirely, and naught would then remain but our knowing. We would know it for what it is, a divine idea, and we would know it timelessly, without change, without dimension, just as you can know an universal law. Natural Science and Philosophy, page 6.7. Idea in your mind timelessly. You can then think it into form if you wish, and that would take time, for as you think it into changing sequences, you are also creating time as you are creating your thought forms. You know, however, that they are but visions of your imaginings and have no other reality than that. Likewise, God knows that the universe is His vision, product of His thinking. From your own point of view, what is your purpose? Your purpose is to so multiply God awareness in you that your purpose is God's purpose. God awareness in you means becoming the being which God is. As that awareness increases, you then become love, which you manifest by giving and you truth and the law of balance which you control. When God awareness is complete in you, you are the creator of all that is because of your knowing your oneness with the One. When you have thus become the universal one being, you are then the ecstatic imaginer, the cosmic dreamer of dreams, the visioner of idea, and the creator of imagined bodies for imagined idea. This is a brief answer to your question. To grasp it more fully, you must fill in the gaps of your lack of understanding by studying all of the lessons from the beginning and meditating much upon them. It is not easy for the sensed human to even begin to understand it, but as you become more and more cosmic, because of your increasing God awareness, you will not have to study it so carefully and think it so concentratedly, for you will just know it. Universal Law, Natural Science and Philosophy, page 680. Question. The God-mind, being omnipresent and omnipotent, would not the thinking that springs from that mind be of the same quality, hence not illusion? Answer. No. It would not be the same quality, and it is illusion. Mind is undivided, unchanging and motionless. The thinking of mind is divided, changing and in continuous motion. Motion cannot be stillness, sound cannot be silence, changing cannot be unchanging, but sound can manifest that which lies within silence, change can manifest the unchanging, and the divided can manifest the undivided. If you would but look at the still point from which the pendulum of your clock swings, you would better understand how the changing can manifest the unchanging. Also, you will understand that its motion cannot become its stillness. Likewise, if you will look at the silent harp string from which its sound extends, you will see that the sounds are not in the silence but are in the motion of the vibrations which extend from the motionless string. Again, if you would look at the fulcrum from which a lever extends to lift heavy objects, you will see that the power which lifts them is not in the moving lever, but in the still fulcrum, for the lever cannot move to lift anything without the still fulcrum. Question. I cannot see how time could be considered to be an illusion. To me it is the most real thing I know of, even as real as matter. Will you tell me where I am wrong? Answer. Your senses tell you that there is such an effect as time. Universal Law, Natural Science and Philosophy, page 681. Your senses see day following night, event following event, one experience following another, your body growing old, flowers and forests rising from the earth and disappearing, but your senses deceive you mightily because they are limited to seeing just a pinhole view of nature. If your senses could extend their range all around the cycle of any effect of motion, all things would seem to stand still and time would not be, because motion in one direction would be voided by the other direction. Your senses see a pendulum swinging from its fixed fulcrum, but your senses do not see an invisible force which is equal to that of the pendulum which is swinging the other way. If your senses could see the whole of the effect at once instead of a little of it at a time, you would never see sequences, hence you could not experience the sensation of time. More than that, you could not even count beyond zero. There is a backward flow to time which voids its forward flow. To exemplify our meaning, consider the flight of a plane. Your senses see it going in one direction, but you do not see a black vacuous hole behind that plane which is as negatively strong as the positive flight is strong. that invisible vacuous empty hole in space behind the plane would pull it backwards to a 0 point between them if the motion of the plane could suddenly cease. Later in these lessons you will read of a new law from the Divine Iliad message which says, every action in nature is voided as it occurs, is repeated as it is voided, and is recorded as it is repeated. A full understanding of that law will help you comprehend the illusion which this universe is. Universal Law, Natural Science and Philosophy, page 682. Question. I went to do some work in the shock wards of our state asylum. Shortly after returning home a sudden depression overtook me which the strongest statements of truth would not eradicate. I felt a hopeless feeling within me, as if all my years of seeking and trusting were turned to naught. We are admonished to visit the sick, comfort the seeming hopeless, and yet if we dare to turn a downward glance, we find ourselves pulled into that same condition. Must we who are learning truth and ever striving to keep the eye single upon the source of our being ignore the call of the less fortunate? What is your advice on this? Answer. When you go to comfort the sick you go to give to them what they lack, and you have in abundance, which is your love, your balance and your joyousness of God awareness in you. If you can succeed in giving it to them they will then have what you have in the measure of their ability to reflect your light. Instead of your doing that you allowed them to extend their unbalance to you. You gave them nothing of your light because of your sympathy and other emotions which you thought would comfort them. In the Book of Healing and the Healing Principle in Volume 2 of the Divine Iliad it is carefully explained that sympathy to an ailing person gives a recognition to the ailment, making of it a reality. You let them reflect their absence of God awareness into you instead of the reverse. You must learn to insulate yourself against the ills of others by your knowing of your divinity instead of being a conductor of them by letting universal law, natural science and philosophy, page 683, them pass through you and touch you in their passing. One phrase in your question convinces us that you do not understand this principle. This phrase "a sudden depression overtook me," which even the strongest statements of truth would not eradicate. This sounds like relying upon affirmations instead of knowledge. No matter what truths one may utter, they are of no benefit whatsoever unless there is full knowledge of their meaning, and comprehension of their practice behind them. Affirmations are no more effective when uttered by a human being than they are when uttered on a gramophone unless they are uttered with knowledge of their relationship to nature. Question. 1. What are dreams? 2. What is hypnosis? 3. Are these phenomena of any significance in understanding the nature of mind or the illusions of the sense perceptions? Answer. Dreams are the result of not being fully asleep. Sleep means more or less lowering of voltage of electric potential passing through your brain, not mind. The purpose of that lowering of potential is to let your senses, not mind, relax and rest for an interval. In utter relaxation one cannot dream, for all of the memory records which are stored in the brain have no motivating force behind them to set them in motion. When you are fully awake, and have that full motivating force flowing through your senses, you can pick any record you choose from those stored memories. But when you are not quite asleep, a little current flows through your stored records and awakens parts of many of them without your power to control them. This strange mixture is what you call dreams, and the Clarity Universal Law, Natural Science and Philosophy, page 684 of them, or their vagueness, is dependent upon the power which motivates them, and the fact that they are uncontrolled. Hypnotism is the power generated by one person to compel another to act in accordance with his own desire. In an inconspicuous manner you see hypnosis in practice everywhere, A mother who thinks for and rules her son, or any strong character in any walk of life who controls weaklings by his greater knowledge and will. Practice in the art of multiplying willpower will strengthen one in this respect, just as practice in exercising certain muscles will make them more powerful than others, or practice in certain arts and skills will give one proficiency over a less practiced person. Many doctors have developed strong hypnotic powers without intending to do so. In fact, some have developed these with sufficient intensity to operate upon a patient without giving an anesthetic. These phenomena have significance in understanding effects of the senses but not of the mind, for they are not mental. The whole of these teachings explain the difference between sensing and knowing. By carefully reviewing the lessons from the beginning, you will see the golden thread of the thought throughout the entire series. Swannanoa, Waynesboro, Virginia. Our treasured students, take thou man's death away from him in this new day of man, give to him eternal life in me by knowing me in him. These were the words of God's command in the divine Iliad message revealed in my husband's illumination, during which time all the divine processes of creation were made known to him. In all the 40 lessons which you have received, that knowledge which alone can take death away from you has been released in as simple language and form as we could possibly give it. The mistaken concept that death of the body can be conquered and the body continue on forever must be erased from your thinking. Continuity of the positive body is not what conquering death means. What it really means is knowledge of a continuous interchange between positive and negative bodies will have so increased your sense perception that you can manifest your thinking in both halves of your body. You will then know that life is continuous, and you will no longer sense those intervals that we call death. Deep meditative study of Units 7, 8 and 10 will prepare you for the last 2 units, thereby gaining for you a possible 1,000 to 10,000 years of comprehension in one lifetime instead of in 100 or 1,000 lives. Knowledge alone can bridge the gap to transcendency. Having now lived for a year with the new thinking which we're trying to adjust you to, you will now more clearly comprehend what we could only refer to abstractly, when you began your study, as a transition from sensing to knowing. You now know dynamically what we mean instead of abstractly. We could not put more meaning into those words at the beginning because it needed the foundations of new thinking slowly and patiently built. To give you the comprehension which you now have, the trend has been, from the beginning, to increase your range of sense perception by increasing your thought range far into the invisible universe where thoughts are recorded in patterned form. Also, we desire to so firmly base your extrasensory perception upon knowledge that the physical bodies of things will have less meaning than the source of those bodies in the stillness of their seed. The greatest genius can more distinctly hear his yet unborn symphony in its embryonic thought form than he can hear it when given a physical body. 685 of sound. The mystic has so vast a range of perception that it reaches so far into the thought range that the only comparison we could give you is the radar, which sees far ahead into space or under the sea to tell what is ahead of it, which is beyond the range of man's perceiving. We all have that spiritual radar, and some of us are beginning to feel it. We have even given it a name, telepathy, but telepathy does not cover it fully, for telepathy means thought transference, inferring between living people. That power of thought transference which is unfolding in the human race includes the thought of universal mind. Whenever manifested, whether through the now living or a long since dead, thought is eternal, and all thought patterns are recorded, both positively and negatively. The human race will someday unfold its range of perception to include that which has disappeared with that which now is, Today and forever we send our loving salutations to you and remind you that in our thought wave universe your own shall come to you timelessly and endlessly, so keep your thinking balanced and filled with love, and the universe will give back to you all that you give in bounteous measure. Our love and oneness with you. I am sincerely, Lau Russell 686.